I'm so happy to be sitting down with Rico Phillips, the OHL's Director of Cultural Diversity and Inclusion. Rico, it's so nice to see you. Really hope you're keeping well.
Yes, I am. I'm in Flint, Michigan, at my home right now. And like so many of us, we're hunkered down because of the weather and the pandemic. But you know what? I've been doing some exciting things. Just because the season is kind of at a hot standstill doesn't mean that Rico has been standing still. So I'm excited to be here and talk to you today.
Well, definitely. We're definitely always happy to chat with you as well. So thank you so much for taking the time. It's been about 7 months since you stepped into this role. It's been a productive 7 months. I was hoping you could just speak to some of the specific steps you've been taking with the league to really open up those lines of communication with regards to discrimination, racism, and just moving towards an inclusive environment.
Well, sure. Since my start here, the first thing that was very important to myself and David Branch, the commissioner of the Ontario Hockey League, is that we kind of got our finger on the pulse of the league from a cultural standpoint. So I was able to interview some recent players, BIPOC players of color, and that had their experience in the Ontario Hockey League. And I wanted to find out, so what was it like not only to play in the Ontario Hockey League and not only to be a hockey player, but from a cultural standpoint, what did it feel like? And so it was very engaging, and I learned a lot of things from those conversations, and it helped kind of set a format moving forward, because diversity and inclusion is a strategy more so than a program. And so one of the first strategies I wanted to do is make sure that I opened up the line of communications with all of the teams, specifically the players, between my role with the OHL and them their role as players. And so over a span of a few months, I was able to have what I call the courageous conversations. I had those with probably about 4 teams, starting with the Erie Otters, who were the first to be so gracious to allow me to speak to them, as well as the Firebirds and some of the other teams that what the whole idea behind the conversations was to open up dialogue. I kind of shared my experience in hockey, being a person of color, being racialized and marginalized throughout my career, and what that felt like to be a victim of that. Share that experience, and what it did. I remember speaking with the Kingston Frontenacs group, and it opened up opportunities for players to talk about things that they don't understand. And these were white hockey players that had questions about the Black culture that they felt uncomfortable before our conversation. So that's kind of some of the first parts of the exciting things that we've been doing. And then the other things that we've been doing is making connections with virtually every team to talk about the abuse, harassment, and diversity policy that's in effect, has been since 2003, and emphasizing why that's important, why it helps protect each and every member of the Ontario Hockey League, including you and I, SJ. Where there's a policy that's there to not just protect us, but to create a standard that diversity and treating people with respect is of the utmost importance to the Ontario Hockey League.
So you've been able to meet with a few different teams, or the plan is to meet with, have you met with all the teams yet?
No, I'm about almost halfway there. About 8 teams have been lined up out of the 20, and the reception has been great. So what I'm doing is offering a presentation about the policy, but we're also taking it to the next level, SJ. We're talking about what to do if you're the victim of hate speech or hate action. Because I think it's important to arm each and every person with tools in the toolbox, I call them, so that if something were to occur, God forbid, because the whole idea behind the presentation is to help prevent any, let them know what the standard is so that it helps prevent any of these actions from happening. But if something were to happen, what to do as a victim. And that being, being able to control the emotions under the circumstances, be able to reach out to others, be able to things like don't keep these things to yourself, because it creates mental hardship, which creates performance issues long term. And then we also talk about what to do if you're the bystander or the witness to hate speech or hate action, because we want everyone to feel as though they're part of the process of making this a more inclusive environment. It's not just for Rico to tell you to do, it's for you to believe in yourself to do. And I think the bottom line with this isn't to say that we have this inherent problem that we have to fix. It's trying to understand that today, moving forward, the Ontario Hockey League takes diversity, equity, and inclusion at the utmost of any other part of the league. And it's very evident by the work I've been able to do and the response I've gotten.
So the reception has been positive from teams, from leadership, from players. Have you found they've really been able to grasp your message?
You know, it's what I'm offering is quite a bit in the package, to be honest with you. We also talk about allyship and gaining knowledge by getting resources, learning key terms. So a lot of information's been given to the kids, but some of the things that I think the feedback I've gotten from players in particular, questions about their role if they were to witness this, or their role if they were to become victim. And again, what we want to do is not just focus on that, but make sure that we focus on preventing it from happening in the first place. So from that respect, I think the players are consuming it. So Rico's plan is to follow up with each and every team in the next couple of months to just continue the conversation, now to give them being the players and everybody on the call the opportunity. Let's talk together now. It's not just me giving you a presentation. It's let's talk about some of the things that are going on in our world with respect to racism, sexism, classism. And I think these types of things are going to help create a long-term better environment for the Ontario Hockey League. So we're not just creating good and great players, we're creating good and great people.
And well, as you mentioned, your plans to work in a few different phases here. And that first phase included listening and reaching out to those former players, like you said, and kind of gauging their experiences. How have you been able to really understand the experiences of past players of color and people from diverse backgrounds?
So lots of things came out of the calls, and most of them were very positive. The few negative things are more, I don't want to say logistical, but they are things that we can work on to create better situations. I'll give you an example. Like one of the things I've been encouraging teams to look at to create a more inclusive environment amongst the team themselves is to get to know one another from more of a personal level, not just on the surface. So in other words, our team meal today will be who's going to host a team meal. So maybe it's a European player who comes from who knows where in Europe, but let's have their meal for today. Let them select what the team's going to eat today. And maybe it's a little bit different of a palate than what we're used to, but that's a way to create an inclusive environment. So when it comes to Black people and people of color, same thing goes. Create a cultural environment to where everyone feels like what their world is about is everyone's world. Come sit at the table with me. So that's one of the real basic things that I've been trying to work with the teams from my conversations with the BIPOC players. You know, when we're doing the investigative phase, I guess you'll call it, or I don't want to call it investigative, that's probably too strong a term, the information phase. But some of the other things that really stuck out, and I think is very important for anybody that's watching this today, is that it was noted that all of the players, their first time that they had received racial slurs or taunts was between the ages of 8 and 11, and it was not in their neighborhood, not at their school, it was at an ice rink. And it was not necessarily their opponent. It was also teammates. It was members within the organization. Different. Came from different places, so to speak, but it was all within minor hockey. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is reach out to the minor hockey associations in the Greater Toronto area, and I've also spoke to like North Ontario Hockey Association, the Ontario Hockey Federation. I'm trying to remember all that, Kitchener Minor Hockey Association, Waterloo. And so the idea is to say, hey, listen, we've got to create a standard at the very youngest ages. So by the time they're 16 to 20 years old and they're players within the Ontario Hockey League, the standard is already set. We don't have to keep re-emphasizing what's already the standard. Now we can work on other things to expand our inclusion. Things like looking for opportunities for Black and brown and people of different sexual orientations to have key roles within the league, whether it be coaching, support staff, or business ops or hockey ops, so that we can long-term create not just a more inclusive environment, but a stronger environment through our inclusivity.
Yeah, you've really stressed the importance of branching out to the community, which was something you can certainly speak to, given all your great work with the Flint Inner City Youth Hockey Program.
Yes, indeed. So the Flint Inner City Youth Hockey Program, for those that aren't aware, is a program that I developed initially in 2010 to introduce the sport to kids that live in the city of Flint that are under-indexed and non-traditional fan bases. And what we do is we provide everything, head-to-toe equipment, transportation, and we do it absolutely free through a collaborative effort from many organizations and businesses within our community. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the volunteers that come out each week, our teams of hockey players, so our high school hockey team, should I say. And these high school hockey teams are from suburban and rural communities just outside our city. And they come into the inner city, and one of the most fascinating things is when a high school hockey player comes in and he's trying to help a little girl who has thick braids in their hair, and they're trying to squeeze the helmet onto their head. They feel really unsure about this, and tell them, pop it on their head just like you would yours, you know, and just a little nuances that are the so to speak, the differences that make up people that you don't realize affect a person until they're dealing with it head on. So then they come out onto the ice though, SJ, and all the barriers are broke down. The hockey player or the high school player is in their world, right? And the participant, all they want to do is look up to this person who's helping them learn how to skate. And what it does for our participants' parents is it gives them a different view of our sport, because our sport is considered predominantly white and for affluent families. And so when those families that are come and be a part of this are like really unsure whether they should have their kid part of this because they can't really afford it and all these other things, factors, there's not going to be any other Black kids or kids of color, because we don't just deal with Black kids. We have Arabs, we have all these different groups of diversity here in Flint. And so what that does for them is they have a different view of our sport through our volunteers. So what I'm trying to do with my experience here in Flint is take it on the road, so to speak, with the Ontario Hockey League and work with each team that doesn't already have an existing program that focuses on the under-indexed and non-traditional fan bases. So if I'm working in Northern Ontario with one of the teams up there, like Sudbury, I'd be looking at more working with Indigenous peoples because they're the most marginalized or racialized community or people in our society, in the Canadian society. And so we want to make sure we reach out and make sure that they feel like they're part of our community. One of the things I try to tell the teams is that the first thing that's on your crest of your jersey is the name of the town that you represent. And so like if we're talking about Flint, I tell those players, you represent what's good about Flint. Good, you know, whether you're winning or not winning, when you're out in the community and you're a Flint Firebird, you're a Flint Firebird. And so while they attend school outside of our city and they basically live outside of our city, they come into our city to play and basically utilize our city, so to speak, for their platform to get to the next level, right? And so what I try to do is express to players, please look for opportunities, whether it's when you're talking about, hey, we're going to go reading today because it's Reading Literacy Month. make sure you talk with the coordinator of your team to say, can we go to some schools that are impoverished, so to speak, or in the inner city? I don't want to call them impoverished, within the inner city, that there's a diverse background. And maybe let's go to those schools and not just read a book, but talk about hockey as a career. Bring our gear in and talk about the work it takes, the work ethic it takes just to get to the Ontario Hockey League, and how your future goals have to do with much more work ahead, so they can see the working side of a hockey player. And this way you can create these intangibles, create these connections that are far greater than just, here's a ticket, show up to the game, see you later.
Well, steps are being taken to make change and address problems in areas that have been overlooked in the past for years. I know the Erie Otters hosted a great event with the Black Girl Hockey Club, who have done a lot of really far-reaching work. Are you optimistic about the progress being made in hockey today?
Yes, I'm very optimistic. And the reason why is because a few years ago, I felt like I was on a little island, and that I was the only one that thought like this. And once my horizon got open and I realized how many groups of people that are creating organizations that are addressing this head on, the timing is now. And while we want to look back and say things we should have or could have or would have done, we can't look back except to say that we're going to build off of that, and our future is bright. We have the Black Girl Hockey Club was not organized as a group of hockey players. For those that don't realize that, these were a group of professional women that just loved the sport but felt like they didn't feel included when the inclusivity, or they looked across when they're attending games, there's no diversity. And for whatever reason, they built inside themselves that they wanted to create change, and they are doing it. I met with the leader of that organization, and we talked about how the OHL can connect with them. And certainly they, as you've seen, they did with the Erie Otters, who's probably one of the more progressive organizations in the Ontario Hockey League when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. With that said, you have the Hockey Diversity Alliance, who I'm on the advisory board for that as well. What we're trying to do is look at the gaps that there are in hockey. And I think one of the larger gaps, and everybody that understands the sport will understand, that say that the disparaging line is how much it costs to be a part of this. And so while we can look at the diversity at the lower level, make sure that people feel comfortable, we also have to look at ways to open up the horizon so that more people feel like they even want to participate. Because the biggest thing I hear is it costs too much. And when they leave our program, they end up leaving and falling away from the program because it costs so much. So there's a big road ahead with the cost, but I think in the short term, you're starting to see some really big movement. Is it enough? I think time will tell. But I think right now the conversation's being had, and I can't be more proud to be a part of that conversation.
Rico, thank you so much for your time once again. I really hope you're keeping safe and healthy.
I am. Same to you, SJ. I know that these are trying times for everyone, and we're all looking back to some level of normalcy, and it will come. We just have to have a little bit of faith and stay as positive as we can. So thank you for the opportunity to share what we've been doing so far. And again, while most people are standing still, I'm still moving, and I can't wait to get an opportunity to visit Canada. I've been there before, but man, I've never wanted to go so much in my life. So I'm looking forward to the borders opening up and shaking hands again, and like I said, being somewhat normal. So thanks again.